What's going on, guys? Welcome to LowKickMMA Weekly Roundup. Today we're recapping the whole year. It's going to be a yearly roundup. I'm your host, Ryan Galloway, and joining me is Jordan Ellis. Jordan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. We've got a big year to recap here. Obviously, at the start of the year, we had a massive event starting with UFC 246 from memory. The Conor vs. Cowboy card had that big pay-per-view, then had a couple more big pay-per-views, and then obviously the coronavirus just threw a wrench in the works, and everything changed after that. Thankfully, MMA was still able to keep going through most of the pandemic and really excelled towards the end of the year. Before we get into the biggest highlights of the year, what did you think overall of how the UFC and MMA in general was in 2020?
I think it's been the best sport in terms of, keeping the ball rolling despite everything that's going on. Dana White, he's a divisive figure, but I think on this one he's hit it out the park. He's absolutely smashed it. He's managed to keep it going. He's numbers to hit for ESPN when he's hit them all, and I think it's been about 20 something weeks in a row where we've had UFC events in the middle of pandemic and people dropping out left, right and centre. I think he's done as good a job as anyone in sports at keeping it going. That's as high praise as I can give him. And the fights themselves have been really great as well. So as someone who works in MMA, someone who's a massive fan of MMA, I feel very lucky that we've been able to keep this going. And I'm also a football fan, so it's been, in comparison, they had to stop for a little while where MMA seemed to always keep it rolling, which was very impressive. And I'm just looking forward to 2021. Hopefully we can get just some normality back moving in. I don't think it'll be immediate, but hopefully in 2021 we can get full crowds back. And because they are missed. I know some people prefer no crowds, but me personally, I want the crowds there. I want to be there myself, and I can't wait for that.
Yeah, and like you said, we only really had a month there. I think it was in March where there was no cards at all. But since then, since it came back in April or May, I can't remember. Since it's come back, we've just had non-stop every week cards. And some weeks we've had more than one card, especially when they went over to Fight Island for the first time in June, I think it was. But yeah, we've been treated to a lot of great moments towards like the middle and end of the year, so it's good to go back through and just point out some of the biggest moments and the best performances we've seen. So we'll get into it. The first category I have obviously is the biggest one, I'd say, which is fight of the year, and I'll throw it to you first. What were the better fights you saw, and who was ultimately your favorite fight of the year?
For me, it comes down to two fights, really standout fights. There's been some great fights, obviously, as it is every year, but I think we've had Joanna against Zhang, and we also had Moreno against Figgy. So they were two brilliant fights at each end of the year. I've got to be honest, I didn't see anyone coming close to Joanna and Zhang. I thought they had it sewn up, and then you get to UFC 256 on a few weeks' notice, and then two for Flyweight. They absolutely threw down. For me, I still edged the girls. I honestly think it was one of the best fights of all time, full stop. I think they went at it for 5 rounds straight. It was super close. I think when we spoke last time, I was saying I had Joanna winning. I think she should have won, but it was that close to it. I'm not gonna hold it against Whaley. The only thing that nicks it ahead of the flyweight fight the other week is the fact that in the 5th round, they were still going at it, whereas the 5th round of the flyweight fight, it did tail off. Moreno had a sore hand, or he had something up with him, and it weren't exactly thrown to the finish, and that's the only thing that edged it, because they were both brilliant fights, like best title fights you'll ever see. And just when they come in, in these massive title fights and people put on performances like that, it's brilliant. And hats off to all 4 of the competitors, but I just edged the girls.
Yeah, those were the 2 fights I had as my top 2 of the year as well. But I went for the flyweights just because when I watched that fight, might be recency bias too. I haven't gone back and rewatched the other fight in quite some time. But I thought they showed more of the complete skill set in terms of there was a lot of more grappling exchanges in that fight, as whereas the Zhang and Jędrzejczyk fight was just banging on the feet for 5 rounds. And it was really exciting to watch. It was great. But I thought ultimately as like an MMA fight, I think the best MMA fight of the year was probably the main event from UFC 256 between Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. But the other thing you got to consider is they were both coming short notice. That could have been a completely different fight if either of those guys had a full camp for the other. I don't know who would have won, but I couldn't imagine. I think everything came together perfectly for that to be such an entertaining fight. The short notice, both guys coming off a win not long ago. So, yeah, that's my pick for Fight of the Year.
Yeah, I don't think there's any wrong. If you're going between either one of these fights, I don't think there's any wrong pick. It's fair enough to say either or. I'd really struggle to really get anyone else in that conversation. I know Poirier had a good fight with Hooker. There's been a lot of really good fights, but these two really do stand out for quality, for just pure carnage. They were brilliant, and I think all four of them fighters will go on. They'll have a massive 2021 now, so can't wait to watch that.
Yeah, it was exciting times. So the next category we got is Knockout of the Year. And I'm pretty sure you probably have the same one I have, but it was the most notable knockout of the year, in my opinion. And that was Joaquin Buckley knocking out Impa Kasanganay with some crazy spinning back kick to the face.
Yeah, and the thing is, despite everything in 2020, I've just said we've probably had one of the better fights ever in the girls' fight, and then this is one of the best knockouts ever. If you say this is the best knockout ever, I've got no qualms with that at all. Obviously, there's been some epic knockouts, but this is up there with all of them. In the first half of the year, I was picking Francis Ngannou for knockout of the year. I thought that was a savage knockout, but then as it picked on the year, we've just had more and more epic knockouts, and he probably maybe even outside my top 10 now. It's been that good. But Buckley, it was so clean. It was a surprise. He was the underdog, and he actually went on and capitalized off it. He's one to watch going into 2021. It was absolutely beautiful. I just don't see any other arguments besides Buckley.
Yeah, and an honourable mention I do have here is recent one, Kevin Holland knocking out Jacare Souza from his back in the ground and pound at UFC 256, I think that was. And that was just an awesome knockout as well, one of the more notable ones. So I did have him mentioned there, but I don't think it competes with what Buckley was able to do in his fight. So
no, there's definitely a few drops down. That was a cool knockout, and then also you had Jordan Levitt against Matt Wyman with that slam. There's been a lot of really good knockouts in the second half of 2020. We've been really blessed with that, but I just think Buckley, it was just perfect, like technique, just accuracy, everything about it was perfect. Sandhagen got a brilliant knockout as well. There's so many to mention, but Buckley, he is head and shoulders above everyone else in my opinion.
Absolutely. We'll move on to submission then. Submission of the year. I'll throw this to you first. Who did you have and who ultimately took it for you?
You know what? I really struggled with the submission of the year because I remember I was going through watching our last chat in the mid-year one, and there weren't a lot of submissions, to choose from. And this time there's been quite a few, and there've been quite a few recently. So just Jimmy Flick on the weekend, that flying triangle was epic. Chase Hooper got a nice heel hook. Who else have I written? Figueiredo against Benavidez, that was savage. That was one of the nastiest jokes you're gonna see. Herman against Rodriguez, Khabib against Justin, that was epic as well. So it really is a toss-up. I probably would go Chase Hooper. I just think that was, just in the feel of the fight, he was losing. He was probably on his way to getting cut, let's be honest. He looked a bit lost in there. And then he just shows what he's got. He pulls off a heel hook, which is, fairly rare as well. And that just keeps his momentum going for 2021. He's going to be in the UFC. I want to see him again. I just hope he works on striking. But submission of the year, it was a tough choice, but I'm edging to Hooper. Who have you got?
So, an honourable mention first, I had Ariane Lipsy against Laura Carolina, where she knee barred her from on top and just obliterated her knee. That was an awesome one. But ultimately, I went with Khabib's submission of Justin Gaethje as submission of the year, just because the transitions he pulled off on the ground from the armbar to the triangle, which ultimately finished him, was just fantastic, textbook stuff. And the spectacle it was having Khabib defend his title against Gaethje and all the media around it and all the hype that Gaethje might be able to bet the guy to come out there and beat Khabib, and it just wasn't the case, and he got outclassed on the ground completely, and so that's why I picked that one.
Yeah, and there's levels to this game, so it is always more impressive when someone like Khabib does it to someone like Justin rather than Hooper against Barry. I just thought that was a cool submission, but again, Khabib, he was in the mix for me. I thought it was a brilliant submission against the top guy who a lot of people were picking. So yeah, that's a really good pick. There's about 6, 7 you could pick between, and I wouldn't even bat an eyelid.
Absolutely. And so the next category is Breakout Star. And there's only one name I had for this, and I think it's probably unanimous around the board. Khamzat Chimaev was the Breakout Star of 2020 for me. He comes on the scene, has 2 fights within 10 days, and then his next fight wasn't too long after, and he won that one with 1 punch. Only got punched in his whole UFC career. Has twice in his whole UFC career, and he's had 3 fights. I don't know where his limit is right now. We haven't seen him against these. Well, he was meant to fight Leon Edwards, which would have been a crazy limit test. We weren't able to see it, unfortunately. But as for Breakout Star, he's the number 1.
Yeah, he's on my list. It's either him or Kevin Holland. I feel like Kevin Holland's had such a massive year where he's come from. He was a popular guy, but fairly unknown, and now he's actually in the running for Fight of the Year. I'm sure we're going to mention him later when we'll get to that. But he's had such a huge year that I'd put him alongside Chimaev, but it's either or for me. I probably would. You know what? I'll probably just go Holland just to be a bit different. But I feel like he's had a huge 2020, not good enough to get my Fight of the Year. I think you've got to be beating better guys than what he's been beaten, but it's been huge. But just to go back to Chimaev, he's absolutely smashed it in 2020. He's come from nowhere. He's picked up these wins. It's just the quality of his wins. How good are these opponents? Does he deserve to be pushed into this spot? I guess we're going to find out in January when he faces Leon Edwards. But and the thing about him, he hasn't capitalised on it. When was the last time we seen him fight? September. I would if he managed to pull that Leon Edwards win off, then there'd be no debate. But there's been a few months where we haven't seen him, and it's died off slightly for me. And in the meantime, Holland picked it up, and he's rattling off wins, getting the biggest wins of his career against Jacare, and as you said, potentially a knockout of the year as well.
Well, that's a good segue onto Prospect of the Year, which was the next category I had, who I actually picked Kevin Holden for, because I thought he come up and he fought reasonably unknowns earlier in the year. He puts back four wins together there, and then he beats Jacare Souza, big names. Everyone, if you're into MMA, you know who Jacare is. And so I thought, as a prospect coming up and climbing the ranks, he did really well, and that's why I gave him Prospect of the Year. Do you have anyone else for that? Who'd you have for that?
See, that's where we've probably switched around. I've went for Chimaev on that one,
right,
just because he's definitely a prospect. Whereas once you're beating Jacare Souza, in my opinion, you're not really a prospect anymore because he's one of the best middleweights of all time. So it's hard for me to put Holland category, but I definitely get it. And then I'm probably going to butcher his name, but that Ilia Topuria, he's fought twice. He beat Yusuf Zalal, then he looked like a Canelo Alvarez with his boxing skills the next time out. He's one to watch. He's maybe not getting this Prospect of the Year, but he's definitely a prospect to keep an eye on in 2021. When we originally spoke, I picked Bryce Mitchell. Again, I feel like he's maybe gone past prospect now, similar to Holland, where once you beat Andre Feely, I do feel like you're top 15. You're in the mix, and Bryce is potentially going to go on a featherweight run, and a run at the title in 2021. So. Really, really good prospect, all of them. But Chimaev is the true definition of a prospect in my eyes. He's unproven, but we think he's going to be a killer. And we'll see it sooner rather than later.
One more before we move on for that. I think Rafael Fizzyev, who just fought Moicano and knocked out Moicano. And before that, he fought someone who I'm blanking on. But he's looked fantastic. He's one of the best strikers in the lightweight division. So that's another name to keep an eye on. I don't know if he's really fought enough to be as big a prospect as a Chimaev or a Holland, but someone to watch out for in 2021 and see where it goes.
Yeah, definitely. He looked brilliant. It was the case he beat before that, and then he beat Moicano, but he's got everything, hasn't he? So he's someone you want to see stepping up in. I don't really want to see him fighting anyone outside the top 10, top 15. No, he looks that good. He looks polished. He looks ready to go. Chimaev, I prefer he weren't fighting Leonidas. He's got a lot to prove still, but he might jump the queue and do that because they give him a huge push. But my prospect, Chimaev, yeah.
All right, well, we'll move on to Performance of the Year. This was one that I thought there was a lot of really, really good performances here. A lot of shutout victories. One I spoke about in the mid-year recap was Amanda Nunes against, I'm blanking, her featherweight title event. Who was it?
Spencer.
That was it, Felicia Spencer. And that was just one-sided fight where Amanda Nunes just dominated. And, that was one of the best performances of the year, there's no doubt. But the one that stood out to me above all others was Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa, and his ability to just dismantle Costa, who was meant to be this heavy hitter and was going to answer all the questions of solving the Israel Adesanya puzzle just by coming through with his pure strength and winning. Wasn't able to do it, and Israel just looked like a beast. So.
Yeah, I've put a few down here. Obviously, the one I was speaking about last time was Glover against Smith. That was a huge upset for me. It was a huge performance, surprise performance. It was a brilliant performance. I'd probably do Edge Jay-Z against Costa. I thought that was brilliant. It was one of them where start to finish, you knew who was going to win that fight. He dominated them from the first bell to the last bell. Even after the last bell, he dominated them a bit there as well. So it's just having that much control, being able to do that to such a top contender. Whereas who else have I put on this list? I've put Khabib against Justin, which, although it was quick, it weren't all one-way traffic. Justin did have his moments. He landed a few leg kicks, a few punches upstairs. I've also put Holland against Jacare on there, which he was in it on his back. He'd managed to be getting taken down. So, is he start to finish just absolutely clean? Dominance. It was everything you want to see in a champion. It was perfect. It was the performance of the year.
And the other one I had an honorable mention here was to Brian Ortega versus the Korean Zombie, coming off 2-year layoff or about that, if not that, and he just looked incredible. I don't think he really got hit at all in that fight. It was very one-sided, and he showed an entire new skill set that we hadn't seen from him before. So as a performance of someone coming off such a long layoff, that was incredible. So I did mention him, but I thought Israel's title defense was better. So the next category is quite the opposite, and this is upset of the year. What was the biggest upset of the year in your eyes? What was the biggest fight that we all thought was going to go one way, but ended up going the other?
Well, just before we get into that, honorable mention to Kevin Croom, who beat Roosevelt Roberts. That was a huge upset, but it's not in my top two. Roosevelt Roberts, he's not of that caliber. He does lose. He just lost to Jim Miller before. He's not necessarily a top level guy, but Kevin Croom on a few days' notice pulled it off, and it's so sad that for a positive weed test, that's down as no contest now because it was such a brilliant win, and it was great to speak to him afterwards for LowKick. But the two I've got is one I've just mentioned before, Glover against Smith. I honestly did not see that coming. I thought that was one of the craziest things ever. I thought, look, Glover, despite his win streak, I'd kind of written him off. When you're 40 and you've been in these wars and you've been knocked out a few times, it's hard to come back, and he's done it in such style. And I'm pretty sure when we spoke on the podcast before that fight, I was saying, bet all your money on it, bet your house on it. If I could, I would. And so that's my upset of the year. Another honorable mention is Dobson against Agapova, because after one fight in the UFC, I was fully on that Agapova train. I thought Dobson was a gimme, and she took her out. But again, it's one of them things. Agapova, I'd only seen her once. I didn't really have a sense of what type of fighter she was. Whereas Glover and Smith, I really thought I'd seen these fighters, 5-10 times each. I was really confident. I know both of these fighters. I was really confident in Vic of Anthony Smith, and he got absolutely smashed. So that's my upset of the year.
So I like both those choices, and I had something else. And my pick had more reasoning behind. I think the UFC and the majority of the fans were more hoping this would go one way that it didn't, and that was Sean O'Malley's loss to Marlon Chito Vera. I think the UFC's machine was pushing for O'Malley to have this fight, win this one, and then could you imagine the spectacle if he fought Jose Aldo last weekend? That's what they were banking on, and Vera just didn't want to do that. Obviously, he wanted to win. He went out there, and obviously, there was a little bit of controversy, but I don't want to get into that. He won the fight, and he won convincingly, regardless of what happened in the fight. And Sean O'Malley's stock has really just taken a standstill from then, and definitely dropped down from where it was in the eyes of a lot of the casual fans, that's for sure. So I think that was one of the biggest upsets, and especially in terms of a potential contender that a lot of people thought was going to rise to the ranks so quickly, and now he's just been stuck.
Yeah, he's another one on that level, maybe not Agapova level where we're not sure how good he is, but he's someone who was unproven, and from Eddie Wineland to Marlon Vera is a jump. Vera was very unlucky to lose against Son Yudong. He was on a nice win streak before that, and for some reason he weren't ranked, but he should have been ranked. He was one of them who always looked like a potential banana skin, whereas the two I fought, and that's why I didn't make mine, is I just didn't see Glover as a banana skin for Smith. I thought he'd run through him. Same for Dobson against Agapova, and that's why I was just they're the fights where I was literally sitting there gobsmacked, couldn't believe what I was watching. Then also thinking about what I'd been saying on this podcast, how hard I'd been picking them fighters, and thinking how silly I looked. So, I probably did pick O'Malley going into that fight, but for me it was a really close, 50-50. It could have 60-40. It could have gone either way, despite the hype behind O'Malley.
Yeah, I didn't like I said when I was, I think we spoke about that fight before it happened, and I was pretty 50-50 on what would happen because I just didn't know how good Sean O'Malley was. Like a lot of people, it's just where was his limit, and he obviously lost that one. And hey, we'll talk about like just this last weekend. Cheeto fought Jose Aldo, and he did really well. I thought it was very, very competitive in those first two rounds. He definitely won the second round, and Aldo, just a veteran, in the third round, he just took him down and held him there until he got the win. So like that's a veteran move, but I didn't think Cheeto's stock really faltered after that. So you know what I mean? Like, I don't think like he got lucky to beat O'Malley, then got thrown in the top contender and lost. I think that he was always going to be a problem for O'Malley, and hopefully we see it again at some point.
Yeah, it's the same as I thought. I thought he was always a problem. I thought it was a clean finish. As we've said at the time, people take them kicks and people, come back from them kicks. Cejudo took it against DJ. Connor's, done much worse injury. I don't even, was he even injured after that?
No,
O'Malley
he wasn't.
just kicked him in his nerve, So I don't want to have a go at him because obviously he's a tough guy to get in there. But, I feel like a lot of people would have overcome that adversity and he didn't, so that's something he's got to answer. And then I was watching the fight the other day. Once he was on the ground, he was getting absolutely smashed and he was about to get knocked out if the referee didn't step in and save him. So it was really clean, and I don't really like to hear anything other than that because Vera, I think maybe over 3 rounds he might have beat him anyway. As you said, we've seen against Aldo, he's legit because Aldo's still there. He might have lost a couple on the bounce before that, but he's still a top competitor, I think, at 135.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to move on from there. And the next category is surprise package of the year. What fighter were you surprised to see have a big rise in 2020?
Yes, so as I've mentioned a couple of times already, Glover surprised me. Not only did he beat Smith, he went on and beat Thiago Santos, which was another epic fight that could have been one of the fights of the year. We got to mention, but he was a massive surprise. Then you've also got Chimaev. He came from nowhere. Gilbert Burns, he had a good year. He got a good first start of the year, but he hasn't been able to capitalise on it. But he came from nowhere. And then Figueiredo. To be fair, I didn't think we'd be speaking at the end of the year of Figueiredo as potential fight of the year, as such an exciting champion, as an exciting flyweight champion. So it's a toss up between Figueiredo and Glover, but obviously Glover's the one who's really surprised me. Smith and Thiago Santos are huge wins at 40 years old. After all he's been through, I just didn't see him doing this. It's such a surprise. And that's why I'm giving him the edge.
Yeah, I had Davison Figueiredo as my surprise of the year just because going into the first Benavidez fight, I thought Benavidez might be able to get a win over him. He had that loss to Formiga, who Benavidez ran through when he fought Formiga. So I thought, hey, MMA maths always works. He's going to run through Figueiredo. Wasn't the case. Figueiredo just dominated him twice. And then since then, he's gone on to submit Alex Perez and then have one of the Fight of the Year contenders where he defended his title. So very surprised by that. Like you said, Glover, didn't expect to see that this year, but good. I hope it continues. I hope he's able to challenge for that title at some point. I know it's got some contention with the middleweight champ, but hey, I'd like to see him fight for a title. He's definitely earned it. Other than those two, Marvin Vettori maybe is a bit of a surprise. He came out and he fought someone who was relatively unknown, who I think it was Carl Robertson, was it? He fought? That's right. Mm-hmm. And then he goes and has a big jump to fighting Jack Hermansson and gets the win there. Pretty convincingly. It was a bit of a back and forth, but he definitely won that fight, and so that was a big surprise. I didn't expect Marvin Vettori to end the year in the top 5, so he gets it as well.
I expected Vettori to have a big year, actually a bigger year than he had before that Hermansson fight. I was kind of disappointed that he hadn't been able to capitalise because I felt like he had some momentum heading into the year, and in the end, it's all worked out perfect for him, hasn't it? Because he's top 5 now. Yep. He speaks really well. He's got that beef with the champ. It all seems to be lining up for 2021 to be huge for him. Mm-hmm. Maybe not a surprise, but Buckley, I also had him in there. I just feel like he's become not a star, but a potential star just with that knockout. Then he follows it up with another vicious one, and now he's got a little bit of beef with James Krause going on. I feel like he's someone he's working in Walgreens still. I think so. This is where he's come from, and he's now got one of the most viewed UFC videos of all time. So that's a huge surprise. But yeah, I can't budge off Glover, and that's mainly because I'd written him off. I'm sure a lot of people didn't write them off and think I'm silly for writing them off, but I had written them off, and he's obviously proved me to be stupid for that. But yeah, Figgy's a great pick as well.
So, disappointment of the year. I only had one written down for this, and I think it was the most clear in my eyes, and that was Adesanya versus Romero. That was the biggest disappointment of the year. It wasn't really a fight. It was two guys standing there, one kicking the other one's leg occasionally, and the other one shooting like big overhand rights and a takedown over 5 rounds. Wasn't really a fight. Probably the most boring fight of the year. Was there anything else you could think of?
No, in terms of fights, obviously that was a massive disappointment. I've gone for more fighters.
Okay.
So I picked Tony Ferguson. He's been disappointing this year. We expected him to, at the start of the year, he was meant to fight Khabib for the title, and it's just all gone downhill. He gets absolutely battered, knocked out by Gaethje. Then he gets dominated. Despite what he says, he got dominated by Charles Oliveira, and now Khabib's retired. That fight's gone. Where does Ferguson go from here? I really don't know. It's been a bad year for Tony Ferguson, and then other than that, obviously that's my biggest disappointment. But I just want to mention as well, it's been disappointing Henderson Cejudo to retire. I think he's so good. He's in his prime. I feel like he could beat all these guys. He could beat Jan. He could beat Figueiredo. He might even step up to 145 and have a go at Volkanovski too. There's so much there for him, and for him to retire, for me as a fan, that's so disappointing. And it's obviously he's still got one foot in the game as well, so I don't even know what the point is of retiring. Maybe just freeze him up from the commitment of being champion. But hopefully we see him back. That's been disappointing for me. But Ferguson, it's not been a good year.
Oh, well, if we're going through stuff that doesn't have to be like actual fights, the other disappointment of this year that I was disappointed we didn't see Jones versus Adesanya at light heavyweight, because Jones is bulking up. You can see he's never coming back down to light heavyweight again. I guarantee it. He will fight the rest of his days at heavyweight. Maybe we see that fight at heavyweight, but I believe it would be more competitive at light heavyweight, and that's where it should have been in year 2020. But hopefully we get it in 2021.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get it. He's a game guy, and he might just jump up to heavyweight for the sake of it. But I think there's enough going on. Hopefully there's enough going on for him at middleweight. Enough going on middleweight, light heavyweight to keep him busy. And it's not one of them fights where we've been waiting for it for years. It's just building up momentum over the last year or so. So I wouldn't be too disappointed if we don't get it, because they are kind of two different areas for me. I think John Jones is, not old school, but he's close to the old school, whereas Adesanya is very new school, and I want to see him go on and do his own thing. Whitaker rematch, Dan Till, Marvin Vettori, as we just said, Blachowicz at light heavyweight, whoever the next contender is, Glover as well. So there's a lot going on for him.
Yeah. It'll be a fun year in 2021, that's for sure. Last category I have before we get on to... I got 2 categories. One not so big, one huge. And then we got a list of who we think is going to be champions next year. Before we get on to Fight of the Year, what was the pay-per-view of the year in your eyes? Or the event of the year even, open it up to that. I think UFC 256 was definitely my favourite. Recency bias aside, I think every fight on that card delivered, and it was just a joy to watch from start to finish.
Yeah, that was I think start to finish, that was a huge night of fights. I'm sure there's some others, but I'm blanking. But yeah, start to finish, that was I was telling my friends afterwards, because my friends are quite casual, so they'll watch some fights all the way up in the morning, watch whatever's meant to be good, and I just text them and said before I went to bed about 7 in the morning, just watch that card start to finish, because everything's a banger, everything was brilliant, there was brilliant finishes. It was everything, so it was a brilliant card, and it had one of the fights of the year in it. So after Zhang against Joanna, we had to watch Yoel against Adesanya, didn't we?
Yeah.
So in terms of after Moreno Figueiredo, nothing gets better than that. And we had all these bangers underneath it. So brilliant.
Yeah, for sure. And the last category we have is obviously Fighter of the Year. I'll throw it to you first. We've named a bunch of the contenders for this category already. Who ultimately was your Fighter of the Year in 2020?
It's Figueiredo for me. Ultimately, I feel like he's done enough. I know people try and discredit him because he's got a draw and he's also missed weight, but missing weight happens. He's a big guy getting down to 125. I don't really want to hold that against him. I wouldn't hold it against him. I feel like if he maybe popped for something or he'd been in trouble like that type of stuff, then that could rule him out. But he missed weight. I don't think he really gained any advantage as we've seen in the next fight against Benavidez with that extra pound or whatever it was. So, and also the draw, he could have won that fit. He could have beat Moreno. It's just, he got a point taken off. Things happen. Um, I just think he had a brilliant year, as you said. He was a surprise package. He was vicious. He got 3 really quick really quick finishes. One of the best submissions of the year. It was just brilliant year. Yeah, I think start to finish, he smashed it. 4 fights. I think he's very worthy of being fight of the year.
I was in agreement with you there. I had Figueiredo as my Fighter of the Year as well. One name I will mention as well, though, is just Gilbert Burns could have been Fighter of the Year very easily. At the start of the year, he beat Damian Maia and Tyron Woodley back-to-back. 2 guys who are both championship material. Tyron, a former champion. Damian Maia, an all-time great. And he just smashed through Maia, knocked him out, obliterated Woodley, just shut him out all 5 rounds. And then he was set to fight the champ in June. Could you imagine if he had won in June, he would have been able to fit in a title defense as well, you got to think. Ultimately, it just didn't work out because of COVID and injuries and stuff. But he could have really, really made a statement in 2020 and been the Fighter of the Year. But all injuries aside, it was Figueiredo for me.
Yeah, for some this year, COVID, they've been able to really capitalise on it and fight often and take these opportunities. Some people have just been on the sidelines, really struggling. So for me, it was Figueiredo or Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland, I respect him. I'm a big fan. But Jacare is the only really standout win there. I think fight of the year, you've got to be fighting the best fighters. And he got 5 wins, credit to him. He's definitely one of the fighters of the year. But I feel like he just needed a couple more high-level guys on his resume, and I'm sure he'll get them in the next year or so, and we'll probably be speaking about him again this time next year. But Figueiredo, he's had a huge one, and besides that, maybe Adesanya, maybe Khabib. I know he only fought once, but it was epic, and they'd be fringe guys, but I think them 2 guys are the top 2, and Figueiredo takes it from me.
For sure. And so we'll jump on to some predictions here. We're going to predict who we think will be champion in all the divisions at this time next year. I think that's a good a year from now. I think a lot of these are going to stay in the same belt holder, but we'll go through them. Firstly, women's strawweight. I think Weili Zhang retains her title. I think she probably defends twice in 2021, and I do see her beating Rose when they fight and whoever else she defends against. Do you think Zhang can retain, or do you expect a new flyweight champion in 2021?
When we last spoke, I was picking Rose to, go on and beat her in a fight. I wasn't sure whether it happened this year, but I said if it did, she'd beat her. And I just don't like the vibes that are coming out that camp right now. People saying she's turning down fights and she doesn't want the belt, and there's just a lot of negativity over that side now. And I do read into that. As talented as she is, maybe she doesn't want to fight. Maybe her heart's not in it. I think Zhang's definitely in it. Full throttle. So for me, I think she maybe defend once, then she'll step up and fight Valentina in 2021, and then retain, and she'll keep hold of that belt for the end of the year. So I'm picking Zhang to retain that belt.
For sure. We'll jump on to the women's flyweight then. So if you think there's going to be a champ versus champ fight there, who do you think's going to hold that belt in 2021?
Yeah, I think Valentina's still going to... It'll be a tough fight and Zhang's game, but she's very hittable. And it's the last thing you want to be against Valentina. She's vicious. She'll knock you out. And I think if that fight does come off, it's going to be huge. And I think Valentina will take it.
I expect Valentina to defend in 2021 as well. I don't know if we'll get a champ versus champ fight. Hopefully we do, but I just expect her to retain the belt. I think she's miles above everyone else she's fought. Even the Jennifer Maia fight, we highlight that so much because it was competitive for a couple of rounds, but it really wasn't competitive as a fight as a whole. It was pretty much Valentina winning every round except for one, and a couple of moments in other rounds. So I do expect her to defeat any contenders that come through that division. And I expect her to be champion at the end of the year.
Yeah, she's just too good. Jennifer Maia, she credit to her for, going and taking a round, but she got dominated. It wasn't even a close fight, so I don't want to big it up too much. It was the same when Tim Elliott took a round off DJ.
Yeah.
It's really not that impressive. It's good. You've done better than most, but it's not really worth talking about. I think Valentina dominated her from pretty much start to finish, besides one round, and she looked fantastic again. And I think 125, it's a cool division, but it is lacking people close to her level, and that's why I think we're going to see that champ versus champ fight next year.
Hopefully we do. I'm going to do bantamweight and featherweight together because I think the same champion's going to have both those belts, and that's obviously Amanda Nunes. But the thing is, if Amanda Nunes retires, which I think is a very, very high possibility next year, she might call it a day. She's just had a child, she might want to give fighting a miss. She's probably got enough money in the bank. I don't know what her situation's like. But being such a megastar she is, I'm sure financially she's okay. So do you think we see her retire, or do you think she holds those belts? Or do you think another contender can take one of those belts? What are your thoughts?
I think she's going to stick around. I think, I'm not sure how much money she's earned. I'm sure it's good money, but she's got a baby. I'm sure they might want to have more. Go and secure your family's future. She's a huge champ. There's so much money on the table when you've got a family to look after. Does she want to walk away from all that money? I don't think so. I expect her to be champion whatever divisions they keep around her. The 145 division might actually go because there's so little talent in it. Like literally, there's about 3 fighters in it. I'm not sure what they do with that. And as soon as Nunes shows a lack of interest in fighting at 145, I think it goes. But yeah, I think she'll beat everyone who stands in the way again. She's fantastic. She's brilliant. Best woman of all time. And I just don't see anyone beating her, especially in 2021.
Yeah, I agree. So I think we'll jump onto the male weight classes there. And the first one, obviously, is men's flyweight. We've spoken about him all this podcast. We've mentioned him 1,000 times. Figueiredo is going to remain champ in my eyes. What he's been able to do to everyone except for Moreno is just prove that his level's above most of these guys. I think there's a couple of threats in there for him, a couple of challenges for him. Obviously, Askarov is a big challenge there. And you've got... obviously, Brandon Moreno, this rematch is going to happen first. And obviously, he didn't smash Moreno in that fight. That was a competitive fight. The point reduction really made that more competitive. But regardless of the point reduction, it was still competitive. I do expect him to win that, though, and I expect him to retain the belt through 2021.
Yeah, I'd probably go there. Obviously, it hurts me. I'm a Moreno fan, but I feel like in the rematch, it'll be a similar fight. It'll be a good fight, but I feel like Figueiredo thought he'd be able to take him out with one shot. Once he realises, I'm not going to be able to knock this guy out, he'll be more selective with his punches. He won't get his hits as much. I just think technically he's slightly better. Moreno really needs to. It's such a good fight. I think it's going to be one of these guys who gets the belt. I think if Moreno wins, they might even do a trilogy. So it might even switch hands between them a couple of times. It's a really interesting fight. I just edge Figueiredo. I think he's just a bit more polished at this point in his career. He's a few years older, and I think this is his time now. Does he stay at that division? I feel like 135 is quite appetizing. He might win the belts or lose the belts and then go straight up to 135. But I'm gonna go Figueiredo, but that's a tough one.
Well, let's go on to the bantamweight division then. 135. Who do you think holds that belt? Do you think Petr Yan is able to retain through the year? Do you expect to change hands? I'll tell you right now, my pick, again, as we spoke in the middle of the year, is Aljamain Sterling. I still think he's a big threat to Petr Yan, and I think that's obviously the next fight. And I expect the belt to change hands there, and then Sterling maybe to defend one more time.
No, I'm going with Jan. I think he proved everything I've been speaking about against Aldo. I think he's the man. As I said, I still rate Aldo. I still feel like he's there, and to actually get a stoppage win against him is huge. as Sterling's a threat because he's so big for the weight, and I'd say Jan, if anything, he's a bit undersized at that weight, but he's got so much talent, and it's just such a huge year for the division because Dillashaw comes back, Cejudo might come back. There's going to be a lot of challenges for Jan. I think he's going to come through them all. I think we'll probably see him beat Sterling and then maybe TJ Dillashaw, and that'll be his 2021.
Hey, bantamweight's going to be exciting in 2021, that's for sure. There's a lot of moving parts there, like you said. Excited to see what happens. Sticking with my pick of Sterling, but anything could happen in that weight class, so it'll be interesting to see. Imagine if TJ Dillashaw comes back and just reclaims his title. Wouldn't that be something? That'd be something you wouldn't expect in 2021 to happen.
No, especially now he's not on EPO, so he's not. I'm not expecting the same TJ Dillashaw to come back 2 years off. He's getting up in age. I think he's mid-30s now. He's not doing drugs anymore. How's he gonna look? Is he gonna have all this? He was someone for putting a pace on. Can he still put that pace on? I'm excited to see him come back. I think the 2 year ban, it was lengthy, but he deserved it. It was a bad cheat, and he come out and he admitted it. And he'll go straight back into big fights. I think everyone is calling him out now, and I think he'll get a title shot quite quickly. I expect him to fall short.
Yeah, well, it would be interesting to see. Jump on to featherweight. Obviously, Volkanovski holds the title right now. He defended once in the last year against Max Holloway in a rematch, which I thought he won that fight. I thought he won the first fight to claim the title too. So he's only had one title defense against one person. Obviously, next February is when they're planning for him to fight Ortega, and that's the fight where I expect him to come up short, and I expect Ortega to take the title there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I know Volkanovski is one of your guys, but I'm just not sold on him at all. As a champion, I think Holloway beat him in the last fight. I think I thought it was a clean win for Holloway. It was a good fight, but I had Holloway winning it, and also the fact that he's not putting guys away. He just seems to be eking past everyone and just things like that. I think it'll be another close fight with Ortega. Even if he beats Ortega, it'll be close, and then maybe the next guy after that will beat him. But I feel like he's having one of them reigns where he's just going to hold on to the belt for a few fights, but someone will get him eventually. I just don't know whether it'll be in 2021. And I don't know who's going to beat him. So I'm going to go Volkanovski, even though I'm not convinced. I'm not sure where the win's going to come from. I'm not convinced on Ortega. I'm not convinced Holloway gets a shot in 2021. So I'm just going to, because I'm not sure, I'm sticking with the champ, Volkanovski.
I just think Ortega's improvements in striking, which was the only area in his game where he was having trouble. I guess the wrestling, but even there he showed some improvement in the zombie fight. So as an all-round fighter, he might not have the level of striking or the striking IQ that Volkanovski has, but I think as a MMA fighter, he's more of a threat, especially with the ground game where you can't mess with him on the ground because you're just going to wind up getting choked out. So I expect him to win that fight. Otherwise, yeah, Volkanovski probably remains champion, but I'm taking Ortega going into 2021. And here's the most interesting one because the weight class there's a lot of question marks here. I know we can probably both agree in 2021, Khabib will not be the lightweight champion. At the end of 2021, I think mutually we can agree that he's not going to be in the sport anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is it's the biggest money division. It's the biggest talent division in the whole of MMA. The UFC they obviously want to cling on to Khabib. I think they might be able to convince him to do one more, maybe, but I'm still not that sure. I still think he might not even fight again. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think Conor McGregor is the best fighter at lightweight besides Khabib. I think he's got all the talent in the world, but does he win the title? Does he keep hold of the title? He's got his eye on a fight with Manny Pacquiao. Mm-hmm. He just seems like he's almost outgrew the UFC. He's outgrew the sport almost, where he can't even be a champion anymore because he's that big that he can't afford to just have a normal defense against Charles Oliveira and pass up on fighting Manny Pacquiao or pass up on fighting whoever and turn all this money down. So if I've got to pick, it's so hard. It's such a tough division to pick because I think McGregor's going to beat Poirier, but then I feel like Poirier by the end of the year still might end up champ if he fights Gaethje for the title. It's tough. You know what? Actually, Charles Oliveira. I'm just saying it. He's looked fantastic. I'm going with Charles. It's a tough one.
It is.
I'm so mixed up. I think Poirier's going to lose to McGregor, but then he might come back and beat Gaethje. But then Oliveira might beat them both. I'm gonna go Oliveira.
Well, the thing is, when I think about it, I wrote down in my notes here, if I'm reading my notes, it says that Conor's going to be champion. But here's the thing. I expect him to beat Poirier. If a belt's on the line in that fight, he claims the belt, he doesn't fight again in 2021. I guarantee you. He goes and box, or he does maybe one more fight in December or November. Problem is, if that's not for a belt, and if he wins against Poirier, he is in line for the title shot. There's no denying that. If he can get a win over Poirier, he is the number one contender in that division. And Khabib's done. Trust me, Khabib. Bold prediction here, but maybe not bold. I don't think Conor McGregor is going to fight Khabib ever again. I don't think they're going to book that fight this year. Even if Conor sleeps Poirier in 2 seconds, they will not book the fight between Khabib and him. I just don't think Khabib will ever do it. So Conor's going to have to fight someone else for that belt. Likely going to be the winner of Gaethje and Chandler and Hooker, whatever that equation ends up being. Which just quietly, I think I was watching a podcast with Hooker and he was kind of hinting at fighting in January. So maybe he's fighting Chandler. Who knows? But whoever wins another fight is going to end up fighting Conor. And even if he beats a Hooker or a Chandler or a Gaethje, who is next? He's not going to fight Charles Oliveira. You know why? There's too much risk in fighting Charles Oliveira because he's so talented, but he has no name. No one knows who he is. Maybe now he beat Tony, and that's a huge win, and he dominated Tony. But he's still not a big name, and McGregor's the biggest name in the sport. So I can't see him defending. I see him beating Poirier. If that's not for a belt, I don't even know if he fights for a belt, to be honest. He might go boxing and just never come back.
Yeah, that's the problem with McGregor. As a fan, I just want him to commit fully to MMA. He's an MMA fighter. It's what he does best. But there's just so much going on outside of MMA now that you can't. I'm not even convinced that he's gonna remain in the sport after this fight. But if he commits to the sport, commits to the lightweight division, I think he's the champion at the end of 2021. It's just that I don't believe he will. Even if he wins the belt, he might just go up and maybe not fight Usman, but if Covington's able to get that belt or Masvidal's able to get the belt, he might jump up and do that. So there's just, yeah, I think Conor McGregor's the best. I think if he commits to MMA and fights like a normal fighter, he will be champion at the end of 2021. I just don't think he will. And for that reason, I'm picking Charles Oliveira. I think he's going to be able to get by the guys who are at the top there, the Hookers, the Chandlers, the Gaethjes, the Poirier. I think he'll have enough to beat them guys.
Yeah, I do think Oliveira is probably he's the most well-rounded fighter in that division, by far. In the top of that division, top 5. I would have said Tony Ferguson until he got beaten by Charles Oliveira. But as a well-rounded MMA fighter who's perfect at grappling, got really good striking as of recently, his wrestling's decent, he's the most well-rounded. So on paper, I would pick him to beat most people, even Conor. Doesn't necessarily mean he will win because power beats being well-rounded. So any of those fighters could knock him out. He's been finished before. But if Conor's not in the sport, Charles Oliveira is a really good pick to be the champion. Poirier's not a bad pick either. Like any of those fighters, Poirier's kind of a rough fight for all of them. He's already beat Gaethje. Maybe he beats Conor. I can't see it happening, but maybe he beats Conor. Outside of Conor, I think he beats Chandler. I think he could beat Oliveira. I don't expect him to, but I think he's definitely capable of it. And there's really no one else that's going to fight for the title in 2021. Let's face it. One last thing before I move on. What do you think if Conor does commit to the sport, takes the belt in January, they put it on the line, he gets it, and he defends again middle of the year? Do you think it is possible that they bring Khabib back? Or, different situation, he wins in January, Khabib's still not fighting, they do an interim title in the end of the year, Conor grabs it. Do you think they could entice Khabib to fight him for a unified title in the year?
I feel like maybe the only way to get Khabib to come back is for Conor McGregor to have that title and kind of be, being himself, being loud, being brash, bragging about it, calling himself the champ, and probably calling Khabib out as well because he knows that's the money fight. Mm-hmm. And Khabib could just be like, you know what, I'm just going to go back, I'm going to beat this guy up again, I'm going to... Also, I think it just needs to play out right now. Conor McGregor is just a distant memory, for most, he hasn't had a top level UFC win since Eddie Alvarez. Really, he got that Cerrone win, which decent win, but it's not lightweight. It's not what he really where he should be fighting, the type of fighters he should be fighting as well. So I don't think Khabib really concerned about what Conor McGregor's doing. But by the end of 2021, if Conor McGregor has a really busy and productive year, he might be interested. And, especially after a few months in retirement where it's a bit boring, he's sitting at home, what's he doing? Looking after sheep. Was he saying he's getting a farm, or he's getting sheep, or he's doing something like that? So, yeah, he might come back then. He maybe just needs a little break.
Hey, lightweight's going to be interesting as well, so let's see what happens there. Jump on to welterweight. I expect Usman to defend over and over again, maybe 3 times in 2021, if he really wants to. I mean, he only defended once this year, so yeah, three might be a good number for him. But I do expect him to get the win. The spanner in the works for me is 2 things. Can Khamzat get past Leon Edwards, and how does he look against Leon Edwards? If he goes out there and smokes Leon Edwards, I'm taking Khamzat over Usman. But if Chimaev can't do that, there's Gilbert Burns, who's the first title defense. While he's this excellent grappler and he's fantastic at it, and I expect him to be the more skillful grappler out of the two, him and Usman. I do think Usman's a better striker, more technical. I do think Usman's wrestling is a key factor in this, because while Burns' jiu-jitsu is phenomenal, he's not going to always be in a position where he can pull something off. So I think Usman's trained with him. He knows where he's weaker. He knows where he needs to keep the fight. I expect him to win that. The other thing is Covington. Their first fight was very competitive. How does it look a second time with Covington going to a different camp and getting a new look at that fight? So if that was to happen, that would be another very entertaining one. What do you think?
I've been disappointed this year in welterweight. It's kind of, just came to a standstill, and everyone's calling out everyone, but no one wants to fight anyone. And, you've got an unranked, or number 15 ranked, but he's really unranked. He shouldn't be ranked. Chimaev, he's fighting number 3. Wonderboy's just fought number 11. It's all a bit of a mess. Colby wants to fight Jorge. Jorge wants to fight, don't know who he wants to fight. It's just all a bit messy. I want it to be really clean in 2021. I want Usman to defend 3 times. Covington, Burns, Leon Edwards. Just get some normality. Even Wonderboy. I just want him to see him clean out the division in 2021. There's contenders there. They're all lining up. Welterweight's been a bit of a mess in 2020, and it's time to get it going in 2021. I really hope it does. I expect Usman to still be champ. I expect him to fight maybe twice and come through. Probably decision against, and then maybe a Wonderboy or someone like that. I don't expect to see the Covington fight next year. And again, Leon Edwards, I think he's still got more work to do. Even if he beats Chimaev, he's got, I think 2022 is what it's looking like for him now.
Yeah, well, I don't know. That's the big if fight there, is that Leon Edwards versus Chimaev fight. Because if Chimaev wins that, they throw him a title shot. There's no way they don't put him straight into a title shot after that. But if Edwards wins that, like you said, they might make him fight a Covington or a Burns, or they might make him have another fight before they give him a title shot. Although I feel like, and I think he said it to you in his interview, he might have said it to someone else. No, it wasn't. I think it might have been ESPN. Anyway, he said that in the contract for this Chimaev fight, they had written that with a win, he would get a title shot. And so if he got a win, he fights for the title. How long does he have to wait? How long is this Burns equation going to go on for? Because obviously that was meant to happen in June. It didn't happen. So, yeah, a lot of stuff to really consider there.
Yeah, he said that to me before the Woodley fight. He said he was guaranteed a fight for the title if he beat Woodley. So that's why he's kind of upset and being turned down fights, because he's been promised a title fight and it's gone. It's gone because of COVID, and it's unfortunate, but it's gone. No one really wants to see him fight for the title, but I'd imagine to get him to agree to fight someone who's basically unranked, unproven, they've said, beat this guy. He's only 9-0. He's like, if you think you're good, beat this 9-0 kid and you'll get a title shot. I think they probably have snuck that in, but the UFC aren't, they're not always one for the words. I'm sure they're making the same agreements with Gilbert Burns and Colby Covington and all these guys. And I think I just want to see everyone fight everyone. Stop calling people out, stop crying for the title shot. Go and fight Wonderboy, fight the person in front of you. Even Michael Chiesa's been picking and choosing his fights as well, and you're ranked 8th. You're not at that level yet. So it's go and beat some people. Everyone fight each other and do what all these guys have been doing at 125. Turn around on 3 weeks' notice, and then this 170 division's been pretty much dead in 2020. It's been frustrating to see.
Yeah, well, we'll move on to middleweight. where Israel Adesanya has pretty much cleaned out most of the division, and I expect him to clean out the rest of the division in 2021. I just think there's a couple of challenges for him there, namely if Vettori managed to fight for a title. That was interesting the first time. I think over 5 rounds, Israel probably gets it done, but hey, that's an interesting one. Who else we got there? Hermansson could be an interesting fight. Till would be a fun fight. I don't know if it would be interesting in terms of I think Israel probably outpoints him, just beats him. But it would be definitely a fun fight, especially the build up to that one. So there's a lot of good fights from there. I just expect him to retain the title.
Yeah, I think it's like a transitional year where I think Israel might spend some time at light heavyweight while the middleweight division kind of sorts itself out. It's very unclear right now who his next contender is. Whittaker is the next contender to be Cannonier, but we've just had that fight, and Whittaker's he's not exactly chomping at the bit to get it. As a Liverpudlian and someone who's a massive fan of Till, I want to see him go away and just be free contenders. Fight Brunson, fight Hermansson, fight someone. Be free contenders in 2021. Get your streak back, get your confidence back. You're 27 years old. You don't need to be rushing into a title shot. It'll come. So that's what I want to see him do. I don't want to see him fighting for the title in 2021. Vettori is someone I think will get pushed in quite quickly. I can see him actually getting the next title shot if the light heavyweight thing doesn't work out. And I think Izzy will beat him over 5 rounds. It'll be a good fight, competitive. But Izzy, I expect to have him too much. And I expect them to probably only make one defense of a middleweight title. And he'll hold on to it.
Well, you're not going to like this then. I saw that Darren Till and Marvin Vettori are trying to tee up a fight between each other on Twitter. They're both agreeing to take each other on. So, hey, if that fight happens, they're really getting rid of one contender, then there's really going to thin out the top of the division. But
yeah, it'd be a good fight. I'd really prefer to see Till take that at the end of the year. Just because if he beats Vettori, he's straight into that title shot. And obviously I want to see him, because I do think he potentially could win, but I feel like he needs to just get some momentum back. He's maybe not in that Leon Edwards bracket, but he's one of them who's kind of he lost a lot of his last few fights, and it's just put a little streak together, knock some people out. I feel like if he gets in with Hermansson and Brunson, I feel like he'd be able to knock both of them out, and all the hype would be back. Then you go in for Vettori, he's going to beat him, and then you've cracked it for 2022. You against Izzy is what a huge fight right now. It'd just be like slipping him in into a position that I don't think he's ready for.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Izzy, he's going up to light heavyweight. He's going to take on Jan Blachowicz. And I think that's like a key fight in that division, right? Because if Izzy wins this fight against Jan Blachowicz and he gets the title, 2 things could happen. He could make the middleweight division go on hold while he defends his lightweight title twice in 2021. Or the other way around, he could claim the light heavyweight title, claim the light heavyweight title, and he could go back down to 85 and then put the light heavyweight division on hold. I expect him to be a double champ, but what that's going to mean is one of these 2 divisions gets put on hold.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be the middleweight division. I feel like there's more to play out there, whereas Glover Teixeira is right there. He's ready for a title shot. He's in his 40s. He's probably only got a couple of years left. I think it'll be once he beats John, it'll be Glover straight away, and then maybe Vettori Till winner down the line. I feel like he will defend his middleweight title, but he'll be more focusing on light heavyweight because there's things to be done there. There's clear contenders to take out. Middleweight, there's work to be done.
And one thing I got to factor in, right, is if he does lose to Jan Blachowicz, I think Blachowicz probably holds that title for a while if he doesn't get done by Glover. Like, I've counted Glover out like you twice this year. Even the Santos fight, I thought Santos was going to smoke him. And hey, maybe he gets in there with Blachowicz as champion and claims the title. So if Israel doesn't claim that title, who do you expect to end the year with the title?
Oh, I think the light heavyweight's wide open. I honestly think I feel stupid for saying again, but I think Blachowicz will. After that, it might be Rakic or Prochaska. So I think one of them 2 could beat him as well. I think maybe at the end of the year we might be seeing Rakic as the champ. I feel like he's coming into it now. But I think it's going to be Izzy. I think Izzy will fight Jan, and he will beat Jan, and then he'll beat Glover. title. So I think Izzy will have the title at the end. But if it's not him, I think it might be Rakic.
Fair enough. I will move to heavyweight, which is a very interesting one at this moment because no fights. We had one title defense in 2020, didn't we? Just one, yeah. The Stipe versus DC 3. But now, Ngannou's keyed for that title shot. That's what's going to happen. They're trying to book it in March from what I heard. So it's going to be, obviously, Stipe versus Ngannou. I expect Ngannou to win that. I expect Ngannou to win that because of his knockout power and what he's been able to do recently. But he lost the first fight and Stipe dominated him, so Stipe could definitely win it. But cast those two aside because I don't think they really matter in this equation. I expect Jones to come in and beat either one of them as champion, and I expect him to end the year as champion at heavyweight.
Yeah, I'd probably edge towards Jones. I'm looking forward to the end of the Stipe era because it's been really inactive. You know, he's unfortunately getting injuries, but it's been frustrating, you know, as a fan to see, especially Francis Ngannou. He's getting so frustrated sitting on the sideline. You know, the best years of his career are going to waste waiting for a champion. So I want to see him get in there, get his opportunity. I expect him to knock out Stipe, and Stipe probably retire after that. Then I expect Jones against Ngannou, which I think is a really good fight. I think Jones is going to struggle to take him down. I know Stipe made it look easy, but I feel like he's a better fighter now. He's so big. He's so dangerous. Getting into that range is going to be tough as well. But Jones is just such a masterful fighter. He's the best fighter ever. And Ngannou, you know, for everything that he is, he's still a bit raw even at this stage of his career. He's still a bit raw. And I think Jones will be able to, you know, avoid the power and just, he'll make it work somehow. He'll get the win.
There you have it. So Jones to be the heavyweight champion at the end of 2021. And that does everything I had on this list. Was there anything else you want to speak about from 2020 that we haven't covered or going into 2021 before we wrap this up?
No, it's just been a great year. It's been great, you know, doing the podcast with you. Obviously, we started this year and we've been smashing them out despite everything. So, yeah, just thanks to you. Thanks to anyone who's watching. And can't wait for 2021.
That's it, because this will be the last one of this year. And obviously going into 2021, we expect to do them every event. Hopefully no COVID stops the events, and hopefully it's just non-stop every week, or if we have a break week or whatnot. But yeah, it's been a good year of fights, all things aside, and look forward to doing it in 2021.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching. See you later.